Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Well, we are on to the very last parsha of the Torah, the haBracha. This is the blessing because the Torah wants to leave us with words of blessing. And so this is the blessing that Moses gave the tribes. We're actually in the middle of the blessing he gives to Joseph, which is quite extensive. And it parallels the blessing that Jacob gave to his son on his, at the moment of his passing, to leave with a blessing. So I'm going to take you to the text and take a look at it. Again, this is cast in poetry, so we can anticipate a lot of metaphor and also unusual Hebrew, high literary Hebrew, and that means your teacher is going to be struggling to try to understand what's being said here. It's very challenging. So if you are confused or having difficulty, then you're paying attention. But I'll do the best I can, and we will do the best we can. So we're in the midst of, here you can see Yosef, right? We're talking about the tribe of Joseph. Bechor Shoro Hadar Lo. So we are already into tortured syntax here. So essentially, Bechor, of course, we know means the firstborn, but here Rashi's going to tell us it means the best of, or the greatest, or the best element of his ox. Hadar Lo is a thing of beauty to him, and we need to immediately look at the parallel of this. The karnei re'em, and the horns of the wild ox. Karnav are his horns. Bahem amim yinagach, through them he will gore nations. Yachdav afsei aretz, together the ends of the earth. Hem revavot Ephraim, these are the myriads of Ephraim, the 10,000s of Ephraim. Vehem alfei Menashe, and these are the thousands of Menashe. Remember Joseph, the stock was good and it split, and so both his sons counted as individual tribes in Israel. And the way we still have 12 tribes is because the tribe of Levi was separated out from the rest. So let's see what we can do to understand this. Bechor Shoro. So this word Bechor, right? The firstborn of his ox. Yesh Bechor, there is the word Bechor, Shehu Lashon Gedula, which actually has the connotation, if not the denotation, of greatness, umalchut, and sovereignty. So again, that isn't going to help us all that much, but we will find out. In the meantime, Rashi is going to support that interpretation of the word Bechor. Shneimar, it says in Psalm 89, Af ani Bechor et Nehu. So it says, he too I will make as a Bechor. And the context there clearly is that we're talking about sovereignty and greatness, power. And likewise, another example in Exodus chapter 4, where God says to Moses to tell Pharaoh, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, Israel is my firstborn. Well, Israel wasn't God's firstborn in that sense, but it does mean, in other words, that they are leaders, they have sovereignty, they're my sovereign children, I suppose we could say, that God is saying to Moses to tell Pharaoh. Again, Bechor, right? This word Bechor. Melech hayotze mimenu. So this is now saying that the firstborn of his ox refers to the king who would derive from him, Vahu Yoshua, referring to Joshua. So a beautiful interpretation of this Bechor Shoro as meaning Joshua, who would lead the Israelites in their conquest of the land of Canaan. Shoro, his ox, shekocho kashe, kashor, because Joshua's power was tough. Kocho has to do with strength, right? Kashe, tough. Very hard strength. Kashor, like an ox. Lichbosh kama mlachim, in order to conquer a number of kings. Hadar lo, right, is his splendor, is his beauty. Natun lo, that is given to him, given to Joshua. Shene'emar, okay, as it states in Numbers chapter 27, where Moses has to appoint Joshua as the next leader, and God says, "V'natata mehodcha alav," and you shall give him of your hod upon him. So, in other words, the splendor, the glory or the beauty of Moses is given to Joshua as well. The karnei re'aim. So remember, the verse went on to say the horns of a re'aim, of a wild. We translate the word re'aim as a wild ox. It's not terribly clear. By the way, I may have seen a word, the re'aim, and I could be wrong, so I'm putting you on fair warning that it also possibly refers to a unicorn. So, and we know that the horn of a unicorn is, as you will see, karnav are his horns. So Rashi says, Shor kocho kashe, as with regards to an ox, it is a very powerful, its strength is very powerful. The ein karnav naot. However, its horns are not particularly beautiful. Aval re'aim, but with regards to a re'aim, karnav ra'ot, its horns are beautiful. Ve'ein kocho kashe, but it isn't so powerful. Natan leYehoshua, so what is given to Joshua, kocho shor, the power of an ox, ve'yofi karnei re'aim, and the beauty of the horns of a re'aim. Going on, remember it said, afse aretz, the ends of the earth, etc. Okay, so let's see what we're talking about. Lamed Aleph Melachim, there were 31, and Rashi is actually, this is with reference to the 31 kings that he had to overthrow. If Shar Shekulam Me'eretz Yisrael Hayu, is it actually possible that the land of Israel had 31 kings? It's not big enough for their states would be tiny, right? It wouldn't be that significant. So is it possible? Ela ein lecha kol melech. But the truth is that you didn't have a single king, shilton, and a power or a governorship, ruler. Shelo kana lo palterin v'achuzah be'eretz Yisrael, who did not acquire for himself a palace and a holding in the land of Israel. And it is so interesting, right? That in fact, for example, the Crusades against the Muslims, I mean, there were, and of course we have in Jerusalem to this day, we have parts of Jerusalem, for example, the Armenian Quarter and other quarters. There's even a quarter called the German Quarter. So why? Shechashuva lekulam, because it was something significant to all of them. It's just a way of saying that it was significant to all of them. That is the land of Israel. Shneimar, as it states in Jeremiah chapter 3. I think this is Nachalat Tzavi. It's just hard to see the tops of the letters there. There we are, right? So a desirable inheritance, Tzvaot Goyim, or Tzivot Goyim, the hosts of nations. Vehem Revavot Ephraim, again, moving on in the verse, and they are the myriads of Ephraim. Otam Hamenugachim Haim, the ones who are goring are Harivavot, the myriads Shaharag Yehoshua, which Joshua slew Sheba me Ephraim, and Joshua himself is from the tribe of Ephraim, right? So he is, in fact, ultimately from Joseph, a descendant of Joseph.
This says the ones who are to be gored, not the
Okay.
ones who are goring.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, right? So, menugachim, right?
Well,
Yeah,
maybe it's
hard to say that it's definitely a future.
gored ones. Maybe
Uh,
it's related to the fact that Joshua's gonna slay them or something.
yeah, absolutely. It means, from nagach meaning gore, right? Menugachim is a passive form of it. So I think beautifully they translate it as the ones who would be gored. So as a passive, definitely a passive tense, right? So that's good. It's good, right? That would be gored. Vehem alfei Menashe, and in the thousands of Menashe, right? But we'll notice that here it is in the past tense, because if Rashi is talking to us now, he's also referencing the fact that when we read the Bible, we're going to read about it, and that all happened in the past. So he says, Elu chamisha shvatim. Oh, sorry. Heim ha'alafim sha'arag Gidon. These are the thousands that Gideon harag is without any question a past tense that Gideon would kill, right? That Gideon killed. It's not a passive form. So harug would be a passive form. So these are the thousands that Gideon slew b'Midian in Midian, Shineamar, as it states in Judges chapter 8, which is a chapter that deals with Gideon. V'zerach v'tzalmuna bekarkar v'gomer, because it talks about these two kings, Zevach and Salmuna, in this place called Karkar. So that's how we look at how we had to really, drain the verse and go into it, deconstruct it a great deal. Again, poetry. On to the next tribes. V'li amar, and to Zebulun he said, this is Moses, of course, said, Smach Zebulun b'tzeitecha, may Zebulun rejoice in his going out, the Issachar, and the tribe of Issachar, the Oholecha, in your tents. So again, this is going to require explanation. And it's lengthy, as we're going to see. V'lezvulun amar, and to Zebulun he said, Elu chamisha shvatim sheberech ba'achrona, these five of these tribes that Moses blessed towards the end of his blessing. Zvulun, the five tribes are Zvulun, Gad, Dan, Naphtali, Va'asher. Those are the five tribes. So not including Issachar, by the way. Kafal shmotehem. So the reason is he mentions their names twice. So it says Zvulun here and Zvulun there. And we'll see that in the future tribes, there are going to be some tribes where the names are doubled up. 5 of the tribes, the names are doubled. With regards to Issachar, we see it's only mentioned once. So, V'asher kafal shmotehem l'ches kam. And the reason he doubled their names in his blessing was to empower them, to give them greater strength. V'hagbiram, and also, again, to give them more valor, more strength. The fee, why shehayu chalashim, because they were the weakest shebechol hashvatim of all the tribes. These 5 tribes were weaker than all the other tribes. And goes on to give us another explanation of something that might have appeared as mysterious all the way back in Genesis. Heim, sheholich Yosef lifnei Pharaoh. These are the ones that Joseph took and presented before Pharaoh. Shine'emar, and it does say that Joseph took 5 of his brothers. So this is it. Shine'emar, as it states, umiktzeh echav lakach hamisha anashim. So Rashi actually gives us the verse from Genesis 47. It says, and from some of his brothers, he took 5 men, quote, Lefi shenir'im chalashim. The reason he presented them to Pharaoh, right? Joseph was quite a strategist. The reason is they appeared as weak, velo yasim otam, so that Pharaoh wouldn't place them, lo sarei milchamto, so that Pharaoh would not appoint them as leaders in his army, right? Leaders in his battles. Samach, okay, going on, we said smach zvulun b'tzeitecha, v'yisachar be'ohalecha, right? So let Zebulun rejoice in his going out and Issachar in his tents. Zvulun v'Yisachar asu shutfut. So Zebulun and Issachar made a partnership, and we hear about this actually. I've heard this quoted quite a number of times from the Orthodox community when I used to go to some of their programs in St. Louis. So they made this partnership. Zvulun lechof yamim yishkon, that Zebulun would reside at the shores of the sea, v'yotze levpragmatia, and he would go out to trade, besfinot, in boats, umishtaker, and he would become wealthy from the trade that he had in going out in doing foreign trade. V'noten letoch piv shel Yisachar. This literally means, and he would take of this wealth and place it in the mouth of Yisachar. In other words, he was supporting research. You'll see, supporting scholarship. So this is a very old concept of the idea of people who are in trade, in merchants, who are in business and have to occupy themselves constantly to maintain the business, but understand the value of scholarship and consequently support scholarship. And this is the example given in the Torah of this relationship. Vehem yoshvim, and as to the members of Issachar, they would sit ve'oskim b'Torah, they would occupy themselves in Torah. Lefichach, and for this reason, hikdim Zevulun leYisachar. Moses preceded Zevulun to Yisachar. He put Zevulun, the tribe of Zebulun, before the tribe of Yisachar. Shetorato shel Yisachar, because the knowledge and the wisdom that Yisachar gained, al yedei Zevulun haita. It was, in fact, by means of Zevulun. They wouldn't have been able to do it had Zebulun not provided them with the resources. Smach Zebulun b'tzeitecha, may Zebulun rejoice in his going out. Hatzlach b'tzeitcha lischora, right? He's saying, be successful when you go out to trade. B'Yisachar, and with regards to Yisachar, Hatzlach b'yeshivat oholecha, may you be successful in your dwelling, in your tents, the Torah, for the sake of studying Torah. And of course, right to this day, we call an academy where the study of Torah is of primary topic, a yeshiva. You have to sit down. You can't be gadding about. You have to sit down to study. Le'shev u'le'aber shanim, right? So, in other words, basically it means to sit down and intercalate the years. So the intercalation has to do with a work in the calendar to try and make sure for us in the Jewish calendar, because we have a luni-solar calendar. Our calendar is not just a lunar calendar, it isn't just a solar calendar. We have to bring the two in sync so that, for example, Nisan is always in the spring, because we know it's the sun that influences the seasons, and yet our days are counted off as lunar months. And because of there's the discrepancy of a lunar year, which is 354 days, that is, if you take 12 lunar months, you wind up with a total of 354, and solar years are 365 and a quarter. And of course, these are not actually, perfect figures. At any rate, it means that every so often we have to add a month to the year, so that this coming year, in fact, is going to be 13 months, in order to make sure that Pesach is always in the springtime. And so this involves calculations and things like that. And the tribe of Issachar were the ones who had figured this out. So in order to establish months, Kamoshin Emar, and we have a verse in fact, in Divrei Hamim, which is the book of Chronicles, Aleph, the first book of Chronicles, chapter 12, Umibnei Yisrael, it says there, and from the children of Issachar, Yodei Binah, people of understanding, deep understanding, Le'itim, for the times. Rashehem Matayim goes on, that verse goes on to say, their heads were 200. What does that mean? Rashe Sinhadraot, they were talking about the people who made up the Sanhedrin, that is, of course, the courts and the high court. Hayu Oskin Bechach, they would, in fact, read, they would study, occupy themselves in the material that Yisachar came up with. V'al pi kviot itehem v'iburehem. And so they would, in fact, issue the beginnings of the month, the beginning of the year, etc., the intercalary month, on the basis of what they had established and the intercalations that they had made. Let's go with a little, let's see if we want to go on. I think I'm going to stop. Well, it's hard to say. We can stop with a verse and then we'll do the Rashi. We'll pick up the Rashi, God willing, tomorrow. Amim har yikra'u, nations they will call to the mountain. Sham yizbechu zivchei tzedek, there they will offer up offerings of righteousness. Ki shefa yamim yinaku, for they will suckle the abundance of seas. V'ushfunei tmunei chol, and the hidden treasures buried in the sand. So let's do just a little bit more, and we'll do the Rashi. Amim shel shiftei Yisrael. So Amim here is the nations of the tribes of Israel. Har Yikrahu. They will call them to the mountain. The Har HaMoriah. So what mountain are we talking about? We're talking about Mount Moriah. Ye'asfu kol asifa. Okay, so Ye'asfu or Ya'asfu. They will gather to Mount Moriah. Kol asifa al yedei kriyahi. All gatherings. They would gather by. Hold on one second. Let me take care of that. Sorry, give me a second here. All gatherings they would do by means of announcements. They would announce to the people that they needed to gather at a certain point to come to Mount Moriah, Kriyahi, Vesham Yizbachu, and there they would offer up sacrifices by Regalim Zivchei Tzedek. They would offer up on the pilgrim festivals, Zivchei Tzedek, righteous offerings of righteousness. So let me stop here, and we'll pick it up tomorrow, God willing. And here we are. So I'm going to keep this here, and we'll go to the Rashi. And we have, Rashi is going to give us actually some other very interesting interpretations to this. Sorry. Hold on a second. I'm going to stop the share and stop the recording.